In the Miller family kitchen, dinner always tasted like silence, the clink of knives, the ticking of the clock. No one spoke, no one looked up, only shadows on the wall, long and cold, like the debt they lived under. Their father was dead, but his debt was still alive. It had a name, Vic Rizzo, and it liked to knock, with its fist. That night, he came. He kicked the door open, insulted the dead, crushed the only flower in the house under his boot, and left behind a threat hanging in the air like poison. The next morning, a letter arrived, a golden ticket, from Northwood Academy. Name on it Liam Miller, full scholarship. Their mother cried. For the first time in years, she cried for hope. But that same night, under a flickering streetlight, Chloe, the younger sister, witnessed a funeral. Not of someone, of a dream. Liam tore the letter, tore up his future, burned it to ashes, to buy them safety, temporary, fragile, costly. And that's when hell truly began. Sarah, their mother, never saw the sacrifice. She only saw the burden. And she found it, in her daughter's face. If it weren't for you, she screamed into the night, your brother wouldn't have to live like this. Chloe froze, those words like a sentence. She believed she was the anchor dragging everyone down. And she accepted it. She scrubbed tables in a greasy diner, the smell of burnt oil wrapped around her like shame. Day after day, night after night. Until one rainy night, a phone call, a name whispered. Her father's, and the truth. About the debt that killed him. A lie. A betrayal. Chloe stood still in the dark, soaked, shaking. And she realized her silence wasn't endurance. It was complicity. And she would be complicit no longer. Watch the next part to see what Chloe does when the truth can no longer be silenced. The Miller kitchen was thick with tension. The air, heavier than the debt hanging over their heads. No one spoke, only the faint scrape of metal forks on porcelain. Clink, clink, canned spaghetti, watery tomato sauce. Dinner always tasted like silence. Sarah sat still, as if her soul had slipped out the back door. Her hollow eyes stared into the yellowing wall, searching for answers that never came. Liam ate fast, efficient, like a soldier. At 18, he was the only man left in the house. He had to be strong. Across from him, Chloe dragged noodles slowly across her plate. She didn't dare lift her eyes. Only Leo, the youngest, made any sound. His cheerful slurping echoed like a stray note in the symphony of despair. Then, thud, a heavy, hollow thump at the front door. All four froze. Leo stopped slurping. Chloe's fork clattered to the floor. The metallic ring pierced the silence like a gunshot. Thud, thud, louder this time. Harder, as if something wild was trying to claw its way in. Sarah flinched. Her hands clutched her chest, eyes wide, breath shallow. Liam set his fork down. Calm, he rose, quiet but solid, like a wall. He looked at his mother. A small nod, I've got this. He walked toward the living room. Each footstep groaned on the creaky wood. Behind him, Chloe pulled Leo into her arms. She covered his ears, whispered with trembling lips, don't listen. Leo, let's play the quiet game. Okay, her hair fell forward, hiding her tightly shut eyes. Liam placed his hand on the brass doorknob, cold as ice. He turned it. The door swung open. Darkness spilled in like floodwater. Vic Rizzo, tall, broad, a bear disguised as a man. Two thugs behind him silent, stone-faced. The smell hit them first. Cheap liquor, stale smoke, it crawled into their house like a sickness. Vic smirked, a crooked, filthy grin. Family dinner, he cooed. How cozy. He walked in uninvited. His dirty boots scraped across the clean floor. He eyed Leo's plate of pasta. Spaghetti. Huh, looks tasty. Probably goes down easier than all those promises your mum's been feeding me. Sarah recoiled. She couldn't meet his eyes. Liam stepped forward, shielding her. His voice steady, flat. You'll get the money. By the end of the month. Vic laughed, a harsh, bone-chilling cackle. He leaned close, his breath sour. End of the month, he sneered. Tell me, kid. Did your old man ever tell you what a promise from your family is worth? He paused, less than the dirt they buried him under. Liam's fists clenched, knuckles white, eyes burning. Vic noticed. He liked that. Oh, you want to take a swing, want to end up like dear old Dad? A man who died with nothing but cheap words in his mouth. Vic turned, kicked hard. Crash. The ceramic flower pot Sarah cherished shattered. Soil spilled, red geranium crushed beneath his heel. Murdered beauty. Leo cried out. Even with his ears covered, he felt it. Vic smiled. He loved that sound, the sound of breaking. 1 week, he said, eyes now fixed on Sarah. If I don't have my money, I'm not just kicking flower pots, I'm coming back. To clean house, one by one. He patted Liam's cheek, twice. Mocking, degrading. Be good, son. Then he turned, walked out with his muscle trailing behind, left behind a wrecked home, and 4 souls frozen in helpless silence. Liam stood still, staring at the broken pot on the floor. He didn't wipe the smudge Vic left on his cheek. He let it stay. As a reminder, as a vow. 4 days. 4 days passed like 4 centuries. The Miller house fell into silence. No one mentioned Vic Rizzo. No one dared touch the broken pieces of the flower pot. They just stayed there, a memorial to their shattered dignity. Then came that afternoon. A scooter stopped outside, a gentle knock. Not threatening, not loud. The mailman, Hiegewakis. Not a bill, not a notice. A thick envelope, embossed with the logo of Northwood Institute of Technology. Liam held it in his hand, silent, afraid to hope. Hope was a luxury here. He tore the edge open, pulled out a stack of papers. His eyes scanned the lines, then stopped. His fingers trembled slightly. Sarah, sitting on the floor mending Leo's worn-out shirt, looked up. She saw the change on her son's face, something she hadn't seen in years. What is it? Liam. He didn't answer, just handed her the letter. She took it, read slowly, sounding out each word. We are pleased to inform you, accepted into the mechanical engineering program. Full scholarship. Full scholarship. Those 2 words struck through the air like lightning. Sarah looked up, her eyes wide, lips trembling. Liam, you... She burst into tears. But this time, not of sorrow, of joy. She grabbed her son, holding him tightly. Your father. He'd be so proud of you right now. Chloe stood in the doorway, smiling, a real smile. Radiant. Congratulations, Liam, I knew you'd make it. Leo ran over, hugging his brother's leg. You're awesome. Big bro. For a fleeting moment, those 4 walls weren't a cage. They were home. They had hope. A way out. Northwood, the future. A second chance. It died. But the future is a liar. Scene shift, night. Everyone was asleep. Except Liam. He sat alone in the living room, streetlight casting long shadows through the window. The acceptance letter lay on the table. His golden ticket to another world. He looked at it, then around the room. Leo's sneakers torn, soles peeling. The stack of unpaid bills tucked beneath the table, Chloe's cough weak and lingering from her cold, no medicine in the house. And Vic Rizzo, 1 week left. His future, or their safety. There was no real choice. There never had been. He picked up the letter. Read it one last time. Engineer, scholarship, future. Empty words. His hand clenched. R.I.P. A sharp, final sound. He tore it in half, then in quarters, then into scraps, as if killing the dream would protect them. His future dead. Shredded paper floated to the floor, like ashes from a funeral pyre. Slow motion, Liam collapses into his hands, shoulders shaking. For the first time since Dad died, Liam cried. No sobs, just silent tremors, hot tears, bitter. At the doorway, Chloe stood still. She had woken up to the sound. She had seen it all. Her heart clenched. She wanted to run to him, to hold him, to scream. But she couldn't. She only stood there, One hand pressed over her mouth, muffling her sobs. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Not for Liam's dream, but for the nightmare they all now lived in. She stepped back, returned to her room, wordless. She knew after tonight, nothing would ever be the same. Hope had been torn to pieces, and hell had just begun. Hope is a candle, and in the Miller household, that candle had been snuffed out. Liam started working at the docks, 12 hours a day. Lifting, hauling, heavy labor, the hands that once held pens, solving complex equations, were now calloused from cement sacks. He left before dawn, returned long after everyone was asleep. He spoke less, smiled less. He was building a wall around himself, and no one could get in. Not even family. The money he made barely covered interest payments to Vic Rizzo, and the cheapest groceries they could find. The house remained steeped in debt, heavy with silence. In that stifling air, Chloe tried to disappear. She studied, she cleaned, she cared for Leo. She did everything not to be a burden. She wanted to be as light as dust, to not be noticed. Then one day, a letter came. Not a debt notice, not a warning, a letter of congratulations. She'd been selected for the state academic competition, a huge honor, her dream. Her hands trembled, her heart raced, a sliver of light through the cracks of darkness. Maybe, just maybe, she could bring a spark of joy to the family. That night, she waited until Leo was asleep, blanket tucked up to his chin. Sarah sat alone in the kitchen, rubbing her temples under the dim yellow light. Chloe stepped forward. She held out the letter. Her voice was a whisper. "Mom, Sarah took it. Her eyes scanned the page, then stopped. A number, travel and participation costs. Not a large amount, but in their world, it was a fortune. Sarah placed the letter on the table, gently. But the silence afterward hit like a hammer. She looked up. Her stare held no anger, no warmth, just emptiness. "A competition," she asked. 2 words, but they struck Chloe like a knife. "An academic competition," Sarah repeated. Her voice trembled bitter, biting. "Sounds fancy." She stood, paced the cramped kitchen like a caged animal. "Do you know where your brother is right now at the docks? Breathing in coal dust. Carrying loads twice his weight, his hands are bleeding. His back is breaking. All to keep this house from being thrown into the street." She spun around, finger pointed straight at Chloe. "And you want to go to a competition? Have fun? Waste money on some fantasy?" I didn't mean," Chloe stammered. Tears welled in her eyes. "It's for school." "I don't care." The scream shattered the kitchen walls. Sarah lunged, grabbed the letter. R.I.P. The paper flew at Chloe's face, fell to the floor like garbage. "It's all because of you if it weren't for you kids. Your brother wouldn't have to ruin his life." Sarah collapsed into the chair, head in her hands, sobbing. Raw, defeated, she didn't hate Chloe. She hated her life. She hated poverty. She hated fate. But Chloe was the nearest target. Chloe didn't cry. She just stood there, eyes wide, unmoving. Burden. The word echoed in her mind like a death sentence. Her worst fear, confirmed. No one stood up for her. No one said her mother was wrong. No one said she deserved to dream. She bent down, picked up the shredded pieces of her dream, one by one. Then she turned, walked to her room, closed the door. Darkness swallowed her whole. She didn't cry. Tears were for those who had the right to mourn. She didn't. She sat in the dark and began tearing the pieces smaller, slower, like a ritual. She was burying herself. After that night, Chloe was never the same. On the surface, nothing changed. She still showed up to school on time, still aced every test, still cleaned the house, still read stories to Leo before bed. But something in her eyes had died, quietly, without a sound, like a candle snuffed out in the middle of a storm. She moved through the house like a ghost, no sound, no presence, no one noticed, and she didn't want them to. A burden doesn't take up space. A burden doesn't make noise. A burden just endures, quietly, until it disappears. Sarah didn't notice. Or maybe she chose not to. Her own guilt had devoured her from the inside out. Liam was gone before sunrise and back long after dark. He and Chloe passed each other like strangers sharing a cell. No one knew that Chloe was living a second life. Every day after school, she didn't go home. She walked 3 miles, through alleys soaked in trash water and tagged in graffiti, past eyes that stared too long, to a small greasy diner by the docks called the Dockside Diner. The owner was a weathered old woman named Meg. Wrinkled skin, crooked back, a voice like gravel grinding metal, but her eyes weren't cruel. Meg needed someone to scrub dishes. Chloe needed money. One nod, no questions asked. From that day, Chloe became another kind of ghost. Wearing gloves, scrubbing pans, mopping floors, taking out garbage. Her hands blistered, her head ached. The smell of old soap and grease clung to her hair, her skin. But she didn't care. Every dollar she earned, she folded tightly and hid in a rusted tin box beneath her bed. One brick at a time for the fortress she was building. No begging, no asking, never again. This was her punishment and her redemption. One night, Liam came home late, soaked in sweat. Coal dust caked on his clothes. He passed by Chloe's room. Light still leaked through the doorframe. He stopped. His hand rose, about to knock, paused, veins on his fist bulged, his jaw clenched. Then slowly, it softened. He let out a breath and walked away. Silence was still the easiest choice. But the Dockside Diner wasn't just grease and plates. Sometimes the wolves came. Vic Rizzo, with 2 monsters flanking him. They'd take over a booth, kick up their feet, laugh loud, blow smoke, like they owned the place. Every time, Chloe froze. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She ducked low, hiding behind the prep counter. Fingers curled around her filthy apron, praying he wouldn't see her, wouldn't recognize her, wouldn't speak her name. She was just a trembling rabbit caught in a den of wolves. And there was no one left to shield her. It was raining, rain that clung to the diner's windows like cold fingers. The Dockside Diner was empty. No customers, just the sound of rain drumming a bitter rhythm on the tin roof. Chloe was bent over, scrubbing grease stains from the floor, hidden in a corner, a small shadow. No one noticed her. Behind her, his voice rose, loud, arrogant, as if the world belonged to him. Vic Rizzo was on the phone, legs crossed, a cheap whiskey glass in hand, that crooked smile etched on his lips. That idiot Mike Miller. Jesus, he laughed, teeth yellow under the jaundiced light. All I did was slip in a few clauses, compound interest. He never had a chance. That guy dying, that was lucky. Otherwise, he'd be rotting in prison by now. Chloe froze, the cloth dropped to the floor. She didn't move. My dad, her breath caught, her chest rose, then stopped. He didn't fail. He was betrayed. Vic's voice kept going, as if twisting the knife wasn't enough. Now it's just the widow, he sneered. Still got some fire in her. Wouldn't surprise me if she ends up knocking on my bedroom door to pay off the debt. Crack! The sound was sharp. The wooden broomstick snapped clean in half. Chloe looked down. She hadn't realized how tightly she'd been gripping it. Inside her, everything erupted. The fear, the guilt, the silence she'd worn like a second skin. All of it collapsed, and something else rose up to take its place. Cold, focused. A fury that didn't burn, it froze. She lifted her gaze. For the first time, she looked straight at him. Not like prey, but like a hunter. Vic didn't see it. He poured himself another drink, still laughing, still blind. But he had made a fatal mistake. He hadn't just insulted her. He had spit on the name of her father. He had dared to stain the last good thing she had left. The obedient girl was gone. Right there amid the grease, the filth, and the vulgarity, something new was born. Not a victim. A soldier. And Vic Rizzo, though he didn't know it yet, had just started a war he would never win. Sal Vitali froze. The rain began to fall. Quietly, each drop, heavy as stone, landing on the worn-out fabric of his cap. Chloe stood still, unmoving, a small silhouette, yet unshakable. The wind swept through the empty street, dragging torn papers from a nearby dumpster. They looked like statues, frozen in a single, tense frame. Sal inhaled, his chest rose and fell, like a man battling himself. He looked at the girl in front of him, her face still marked by traces of youth. But her eyes, those eyes belonged to someone who had walked through fire. "What do you want from me?" His voice was hoarse, fractured, not angry, not defensive, just afraid. Chloe lifted her face, rain soaked her hair, dripping down her cheeks. She didn't wipe it away. "I don't want anything," she said, her voice cold and steady. "I just don't want someone else to bury their father without knowing why." Sal bowed his head. His hand clenched the strap of his briefcase so tightly the veins turned pale. "Everything Vic does is laundered through your paperwork," she continued. "Every word, every number. They're knives. And you're the one who sharpens them." Sal exhaled sharply, a sound strangled in his throat. "You don't understand. They could kill me." His voice cracked like dry wood. "My granddaughter. She's all I have." Chloe stepped closer, close enough for him to see her eyes shining through the rain. She wasn't angry. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She whispered, "Then because you have no one else, you need to choose right." Wind swept down the alley, the streetlight flickered. A distant car horn wailed, distorted through the storm. Sal closed his eyes. His shoulders trembled. Then, without a word, he turned away, walked slowly, tired, but not shaking anymore. Chloe stayed in the middle of the street, watching him fade into the rain. There was no victory cry, no relief. Only silence, a silence suffocating. She turned, started walking. Each step echoed like a drumbeat in her chest. The first crack had appeared, and she knew the fight was far from over, but she also knew she was no longer alone. In the heart of the darkness, one man had begun to break. Chloe clenched her frozen hands, then slowly released them. Once, just once, before planning her next move. Rain kept falling outside the window. Heavy drops drummed against the tin roof like war drums. Liam and Chloe sat across from each other. Between them lay a small iron key on a rough, worn wooden table, a tiny object, but heavy as fate. "We need a map of the docks," Liam said, eyes fixed on the key. "Exits, cameras, guards, everything." "I can find it," Chloe replied. "Online? Some kids at school live near there. I'll ask without giving away the reason." Liam nodded. His large, calloused hands clenched, then slowly relaxed. "How much time do we have?" "1 week," Chloe said. Her voice sounded like it had been carved from cold stone. Vic said, "If there's no money, he's coming back." Liam bit his lip. Blood welled up, but he didn't wipe it. "And Mom?" he asked, a small question, but it carried the weight of a mountain. Chloe stayed silent. Wind slipped through the cracks in the door. The ceiling light flickered. She looked up. Her voice was low, hoarse, but each word cut through the air like ice. "She won't understand. And I can't waste any more time trying to make her believe in something she abandoned long ago." Liam bowed his head. His gaze drifted into the shadows of the room. Their shadows stretched across the peeling wall, one tall, one smaller, side by side. A long pause. Then he spoke. His voice was rough, tired, but steel hard. "We'll need a bag, big enough to hide the ledger, gloves, no fingerprints, and a phone. You stay outside. Keep watch. I'll go in." Chloe shot up. "No, I'm going in with you." "Chloe." No negotiations. She cut him off, eyes burning. "If something goes wrong, at least we won't die alone." The room fell silent, a suffocating silence, as if the world had stopped spinning to listen to their decision. Liam looked at her again, and for the first time, he didn't see the past. He didn't see sacrifice or protection. He saw himself in a smaller form, frailer maybe, but stronger than he ever dared to admit. He nodded. 3 a.m. Tuesday. Fewer people. Ocean winds will cover our steps. I'll prep the flashlights. First aid kit, Chloe said quickly, and the door to Leo's room creaked open. They both turned sharply. A small figure peeked out, hair messy, wide eyes still heavy with sleep. You guys, what are you talking about? Chloe stepped forward, crouched down. She smiled a soft smile, but something had changed. Grown-up stuff. Kiddo. I heard you say fight, Leo whispered. Fight who? Liam stepped forward, placing a hand on his brother's head. The dark, he said quietly. Leo yawned, but the dark never wins. If you turn the light on. Chloe looked at Liam. A flicker of light passed through their eyes. Exactly, she said. You just have to be brave enough to switch it on. Leo nodded sleepily and wandered back to his room. The door clicked shut. Liam and Chloe turned back to the table. The key still sat there, cold, metallic, silent. But it was no longer terrifying, because for the first time they wouldn't walk into the dark alone. Night. Cold. Wind from the sea carried salt and the stench of rust. The old port was a graveyard of dead ships, silent, menacing. Liam and Chloe moved between the hulking shadows of shipping containers like two phantoms. Every tiny sound, the crunch of gravel, the hiss of wind through metal cracks tightened their chests. Warehouse number 7. It stood there ouring, mute, like a sleeping beast. Liam gave the signal. Chloe nodded. They slipped to the back door. Liam kept watch, eyes scanning the dark. Chloe's hand trembled as she slipped Sal's key into the lock. Click. The metallic sound pierced the silence like a scream. The door creaked open, exhaling the stale scent of old paper and tobacco. Darkness loomed inside. They stepped in. The office was a mess. Papers strewn everywhere, a dusty desk, and on the wall, just as Sal said, a painting of a stormy sea. Liam flicked on his phone flashlight. A faint beam swept the room. Hurry, he whispered. Chloe stepped up to the painting. Her hands trembled as she tried to lift it. It was heavier than she expected. Liam rushed over, together. They took it down. Behind it, there it was. A recessed wall compartment. Inside, it waited. A thick black leather ledger, heavy. Chloe's heart pounded. They had found it. She reached in. A floodlight swept across the window. Headlights. Down, Liam hissed, dragging her to the floor. He shut off the light. They scrambled under the desk, held their breath. The engine cut, a car door slammed. Heavy footsteps. Familiar. Vic Rizzo. He was back. Chloe's heart threatened to burst. He'd see the painting. He'd know. It was over. The door flung open. Vic entered, muttering curses. He didn't turn on the lights, only used his phone screen. The ghostly glow drifted across the room. Under the desk, Liam squeezed Chloe's hand. Ice cold. He could feel her trembling. Vic marched to the corner, crouched at a safe, twisted the lock. Click. He pulled out a wad of bills, stuffed them into his jacket. Never noticed the missing painting. A flicker of hope. Then, Bizizi. Biziz. A small sound, but in the suffocating silence, it rang like a death knell. Chloe's phone, a junk message. She forgot to silence it. Vic froze, head tilted, listening. Chloe froze too, couldn't breathe, couldn't think, eyes wide, pleading with Liam. Vic took a step toward the desk, slow, like a predator stalking prey. That's when Liam moved. He rolled to the other side, snatched a heavy metal ashtray. He threw it, not at Vic, but at the far window. Crash. Glass exploded. The sound tore the night open. What the hell? Vic roared, yanking out a pistol, aiming at the broken window. Who the hell's out there? That was the chance. One shot, only one. The sound snapped Chloe out of her paralysis. She looked at Liam, then at the wall. She lunged. Her hand grabbed the ledger, heavy, like her family's fate. Liam, she screamed. He didn't hesitate. He bolted, shoved her toward the door. Run, Chloe. Go. They burst outside, into the freezing night. Behind them, Vic's curses and then the gunshot. Bang! The bullet slammed into the doorframe inches from Chloe's head. But they didn't stop. They ran. Faster. Until the shadows of dead ships swallowed them whole. They had it. And for now they were still alive. They ran, without looking back, without time to think. Adrenaline surged through their chests. Every footstep hit the ground like a gunshot. The warehouse alarm shrieked behind them, piercing the night, then quickly drowned beneath the wind and the pounding of their hearts. They didn't stop until they reached their neighborhood, ducking into a narrow alleyway. There, in the shadows, they collapsed gasping, hunched over, palms on their knees. Chloe clutched the ledger to her chest. It was their trophy, their proof, their hope. "We go to the police," she said, breathless. Liam shook his head. Sweat streamed down his face. "No," he said firmly. "In Port Sterling. Who knows who the police really work for? Vic's had this place in his pocket too long." He looked at Chloe. "We do this differently." They didn't go home. Too dangerous. Instead, Liam led Chloe to the public library. It had been closed for hours, but he knew if they stood close enough, they could still connect to the building's free Wi-Fi. Under the pale streetlight, they sat on the freezing concrete. Liam pulled out his phone. His fingers were numb, but steady. Page by page, line by line, transaction by transaction. He photographed every entry in Vic Rizzo's ledger. Each image was a nail in the coffin of the man who had destroyed their lives. Then he drafted an email. No name, no introduction, just one recipient. Jessica Finch, the investigative journalist, the one who couldn't be bought. He attached every photo, no commentary, no explanation, then tapped send. The little arrow blinked. Gone. They're shot in the dark, sent screaming into cyberspace. 2 days later, a headline exploded across a major newspaper: "Loan Shark Empire exposed in Port Sterling, the shadows beneath a harbor city." Jessica Finch's article, backed by the leaked ledger photos, ignited a firestorm. Day 3. Unmarked black SUVs with FBI logos rolled into Port Sterling, something the town had never seen. They sealed off Vic's office, then his house. Day 4. Midday, broad daylight. Vic Rizzo was led out of the dockside diner in handcuffs. The swagger was gone, only shock and fury remained. The whole town watched. His empire crumbled, completely. That night, Chloe and Liam sat together watching the news. Neither spoke. They just looked at each other. They had done it. A few days later, Liam got a call from the police. They wanted his statement. He agreed. At the station, after answering their questions, he turned to leave. That's when they brought Vic in. Their eyes locked, Vic's face twisted with hatred. "You little bastard," he spat, straining against the officers. "It was you. Wasn't it you and that little bitch of a sister? I'll kill you both. You hear me? I'll kill you." 2 cops held him back. Liam didn't flinch. He stepped closer. Close enough so only the 2 of them could hear. His voice was calm, steady, cold as steel. "You stole my father's future." He paused, looked Vic dead in the eye. "But you will never steal ours." Then Liam turned and walked away, without looking back. Behind him, Vic screamed and struggled, but he was done. Ashes. Liam stepped into the sunlight, and for the first time in years he felt free, truly free. The storm had passed. Vic Rizzo was now just a name on the evening news. The debt was gone. But inside the Miller house, the silence was heavier than ever. Not the silence of fear, but of awkwardness, of things too painful to be said aloud. That night, when Liam and Chloe went to give their statements, Sarah didn't sleep. She sat alone in the living room, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the door. Every passing car outside made her flinch. She had no idea what her children had done, only that they'd been caught up in something dangerous. She was afraid. But deeper than that was shame. A bitter, corrosive shame. Her children had fought, and she had just sat there, crying. At dawn, they returned, exhausted but safe. Liam said nothing. He walked to the kitchen table and placed something down. A black leather ledger, heavy, real. The truth bound in cowhide. He looked at his mother. This is the truth behind Dad's debt. He paused, then turned to look at his little sister standing quietly beside him. And Chloe is the one who found it. Sarah froze. She looked at the ledger, then at Chloe. Her little girl, the one she had once called a burden, the one she had scolded for chasing silly dreams, the one she had pushed away with her own bitterness. While she had been drowning in sorrow, it was that same quiet girl who had walked into the lion's den, faced a monster, and fought for justice. Every cruel word Sarah had ever said now came back, each one a dagger straight to the heart. She didn't see poverty anymore. She didn't see injustice. She saw her own reflection, a failed mother. She wanted to say something, an apology, an explanation, but her throat closed, no words came. All she could do was look at Chloe stunned, ashamed, and drowning in regret. Weeks passed. The invisible wall between Sarah and Chloe remained. They spoke about dinner, Leo's homework, meaningless things. But they never talked about what happened. The apology Chloe deserved stayed stuck somewhere between Sarah's guilt and Chloe's silence. Then, one night, Sarah knocked on her daughter's door. Chloe looked up from her book. "Mom." Sarah entered, her hands clenched around something. She couldn't meet her daughter's eyes. She walked to the desk and placed two things down. A registration form for next year's state academic competition, already filled out, Chloe Miller, and a small stack of cash. Not much, but carefully flattened. Chloe stared, confused. Sarah took a breath. Her voice trembled. I sold your father's wedding ring." Chloe froze. That ring, the last thing her mother had left of him. "It's not a lot," Sarah continued, finally meeting her daughter's gaze. Her eyes were wet. "But it's enough to get you there. You deserve it." She didn't say "I'm sorry." She said, "You deserve it." And that meant more than any apology ever could. It was acknowledgement. It was redemption. It was love spoken in action. Tears welled in Chloe's eyes, not tears of pain, but of release. She didn't say "I forgive you." She just reached out, took her mother's calloused hand and held it tight. And then they cried. Together. Cried for the pain, for the silence, for the healing that had finally begun. In a small room, beneath a warm yellow light, a mother and daughter, once strangers beneath the same roof, found their way back to each other. Forgiveness didn't come in words. It came in tears, in a hand held tight, in a sacrifice made out of love. And a wound long hidden finally began to heal. 6 months later, winter in Port Sterling was as cold and grey as ever. But inside the Miller house, spring had arrived. On the stage of a large auditorium, lights blazed. Chloe stood behind the podium, a certificate in her hand. She was no longer the girl who kept her head down. She stood tall, eyes bright, voice clear. She was speaking about the theory of relativity, but her smile, it spoke of something far greater. Rebirth. In a noisy auto shop, thick with grease and oil fumes, Liam, clad in a worn jumpsuit, was bent over an engine. He still worked with his hands, still got dirty, but during his break, he didn't sit alone in silence. He leaned against a stack of old tires, flipping through a book, Python for Engineers. His calloused hands turned the pages slowly. His eyes, once dulled by fatigue, now looked forward to something more. He was rebuilding his future, one line of code at a time. At the Dockside Diner, the place where nightmares once began, Sarah now worked in a clean apron, her hair neatly tied back. She carried a plate of eggs and toast to a customer, and she smiled, not forced, not fake. She had taken Chloe's old job, not out of desperation, but out of gratitude, a quiet act of remembrance. Her hands no longer trembled from fear. They now served with quiet strength. She no longer avoided the past, she lived with it and rose above it. That evening, the familiar kitchen, warm yellow light, the smell of roasted chicken filled the house. No more canned pasta, no more silence. Leo was chattering excitedly about school. Chloe teased him gently. Liam listened, smiling every now and then. Sarah sat across the table, watching the faces she loved most. She picked out the best slice of chicken breast, placed it in Chloe's bowl, then a golden drumstick into Liam's. No words, just small gestures, but they said everything. We made it, we stayed, and we're starting over. The setting sun cast long shadows through the kitchen window. The light caught floating dust, tiny particles dancing in the air. Not filth, not poverty. They shimmered like millions of tiny stars. The Millers' lives had once felt like that dust, weightless, aimless, on the verge of being swept away. But not anymore. They had each other now. They were a cluster of light. Small, but resilient, glowing warm and fierce against the grey skies of Port Sterling.